Paul, Deluded, I'm back again. Obviously, I'm at my 9 to 5 and whatnot. And I've seen the news in relation to Arteta. I don't want to say Arteta's on the verge of joining Arsenal, but it's become clear that he is the front runner, more so than we've already known already. We know we've been linked with Arteta for a while. And this morning, a lot of news has come out following it emerging, that footage seeing Vinay and I believe Huss Farme of Arsenal or Arsenal's board were pictured leaving Arteta's mansion, or at least a rendezvous point in the early hours of the morning in Manchester. For obvious reasons, clearly speaking to Arteta. Again, we don't know if he's actually going to be the manager, if it's going to be done. Nothing's final until I see it on Arsenal.com or whatever. But it does look like we're close to having a new manager, and it does look like it's going to be Mikel Arteta. Before I offer any more opinions, I might as well read what I've come across. Vinay Venkatesham, cannot say his last name, apologies, has been pictured leaving Mikel Arteta's Manchester mansion at 1:20 a.m. after late night talks. So are the Gunners finally ready to appoint a new manager with Pep Guardiola's number 2 returning? Clearly, I just copied and pasted this. The Arsenal managing director was obviously pictured leaving the mansion in the early hours of the morning as speculation over the Gooners' new manager intensifies. In a further sign that Arteta may be set for the top job at the Emirates Stadium, the club's contract negotiator, Huss Farme, was also seen leaving the property at around 1:20 a.m. Pictures show the 2 members of the Arsenal hierarchy leaving Arteta's mansion and stepping into a waiting Mercedes-Benz people carrier with blacked out windows. It is also said it was around a 2-hour meeting, people. So again, the article, or at least to my knowledge, I haven't seen anything about Arteta being there beyond the obvious. It's his mansion. Obviously here the advisors and Arteta are going to be locked inside. So it does seem like we're close to be announcing a new member of the side, and I do think the club needed to do this. There are a lot of question marks. First and foremost, before I get into Arteta, Arteta, I wouldn't say he's available immediately now, but in terms of the opportunity to be a number 1 in his own right, he's the closest thing we're going to have to a manager who at least is believed to move the club forward available. Rodgers isn't going to sign. He signed a new deal and it's a heavy compensation package, similar to Pochettino, beyond the fact we knew he wasn't getting these managers. Allegri's taking a sabbatical and he obviously doesn't want to come. I believe Arteta's on around £3 million already in terms of his annual wages at Manchester United. In terms of the managers' names I've just said and Emre's fee and whatnot, you can see why we go for Arteta. He's available now, so it means it's an easier operation. He will be on less money than maybe the bigger names. And you've heard we actually have, well, you've seen previous reports and me do a video on the reports that we don't have money to be giving a manager top wages or the top bracket of wages. Depending on that, because we've got the 3rd highest net spend or something like that, and we've got a pretty, well, if not the 3rd highest net spend, we've definitely got one of the biggest net spends in the club in the Prem at the moment, and we've got one of the highest wage bills, so we are mismanaged, as we know. So yeah, for me, it'd be nice to see a decision come to a decision, or us finally make up our mind in relation to if it's going to be Arteta or anyone else. First and foremost, because you see Ljungberg. Hopefully Ljungberg is retained in the coaching staff. His time will come to be a manager in his own right. But I'd like to see Mertesacker and Ljungberg immediately in the first team, because I know Arteta will bring through his own staff if this does happen, but I think you've got to surround him by experienced members of the side, well, experienced individuals, if you can say that, and people that probably think the same way as he's working, because he is a novice in this role. He is going to make mistakes, he is going to get things right, he is going to make a lot of mistakes, he is going to obviously comprehend things he knows about as a manager, but when you're actually in that seat, there's probably a lot of things you didn't know were probably a thing. So we've probably got to, as much as we've got these young players, he's a young sort of manager as well. And people listening to this might not want to hear this, but we have to, it would be, listen, there's going to be scopes for mistakes from Arteta. The club cannot be naive. For all the Pep Guardiola coaching sessions, and you hear how Arteta specifically there's been 2 games against Arsenal, how allegedly he's been in charge of the game, or the manager in all but name, Pep Guardiola's given him the reins, and he's done good work. You hear how he coaches and improves players one-to-one like Sterling. You hear how tactically he's in charge of finding weak spots in oppositions and things like that. These are all promising things you want to hear. But people do have to factor in he could make mistakes. Now, football has gone that way. Of course, we would want someone potentially more experienced and things like that, because even the most experienced manager in a role like this at Arsenal is going to struggle. The players are not good. I definitely feel the squad is better than the results we are right now. We could definitely, with this squad, have more of a fight for the top 4 and definitely not have blown it in November, really and truly. But I do think that he's shackled with this side. He's got a squad he's going to need to be able to give him time to work forward with. A lot of the side make bad habits. He's going to need to be able to bring in players. And if I was Arteta, if they didn't assure you that definitely defensive additions cannot be made, it wouldn't make sense. For the club, it needed to happen as well, because you heard Ljungberg pleading with the club really to allow him to bring some staffing additions. And the longer this managerial search went on, you're a bit puzzled in that clearly they weren't bringing these additional staffing or support staff to help Ljungberg, because they're clearly going to make an announcement. But at the same time, we're not hearing any of these names, we're not seeing any progress, so it's a bit of do and don't. A lot of people will, and I've made the comparison myself between Wenger and Arteta in the same way that it was a brave appointment to get Wenger, and I do think potentially but I do think the club kind of bottled the chance to go for Arteta last season and went for a safe pair of hands in Emery. I'm not belittling the club's decision then, because Arteta didn't have the experience, but that's the only comparison you can make. It's completely different. I mean, it's quite disrespectful to Wenger, to be honest with you, because he already did his thing in Japan, and he already made a name for himself of sorts at Monaco. He was one of the only sides, I think Ajax and Monaco were only sides playing a 4-3-3 or a certain sort of way. So Wenger definitely had way more experience than Arteta. A lot of people, there'll be different ways to take this news. A lot of people will find it doom and gloom. They'll be like, okay, Arteta, okay, I hear the Pep Guardiola stuff, but laying out cones and doing these things doesn't mean you can manage. And you also get the very optimistic man out there, in that they'll see he's played under Wenger, he's obviously come out of La Masia, he's done his thing close to Pep Guardiola. You're hearing the great things he does with the City team, where Pep Guardiola gives him freedom, and this gives you all confidence in terms of the modern day manager. So yeah, or you're also in wait and see. Me personally, I can't speak for anyone, but I'm going to, any manager that comes in, I owe it to them to support them. I'm going to support Arteta. Clearly the lack of experience is a concern, but I'm going to support Arteta, and hopefully he can do his thing. Arteta needs to be helped, because there's no way around it. Even if he does, there'll be question marks whether he does well or does wrong. People will be out there to say, I told you he's overrated, I told you he's the bee's knees sort of thing. But he needs to be surrounded with people that can help him. The board need to pull their finger out and really address the spine, because Arteta is going to be a head coach. We're moving on from managers and head coaches. As poor as I think Emery is in terms of certain recruitments in certain areas, specifically the back five, the boardroom has not helped the club at all, and Arteta is going to be needed to be helped. It doesn't matter, the most experienced manager will struggle in his side. Even if Arteta is able to install us being able to defend, being able to press from the front, better in transition, there'll come a point where he hits a glass ceiling where he simply needs better players. And I'm very pessimistic specifically about the spine of this club. It's all great bringing in Arteta, but we need to address the spine of this club. And obviously top four is probably a write-off, if you didn't believe so, which I did. I think it's a myth, but if you've got any optimism, it is a write-off, because at least you'd imagine Arteta, if he doesn't show it, he'd have to be clipped, but he'd be given anything from 3 to 4 years, specifically from now till May. It's a free hit in that he needs to learn the squad, beyond the obvious, identify the areas we need to improve, kind of put his mark on the team and do what Emery failed to do, in that we know these players are poor, we know they're going to let them down, but if we can see the early building blocks as to what he wants to do, then obviously better players come in and it changes things. I just hope the players pull together in the right direction. What I do hope is that Arteta, obviously he might have been a previous Arsenal player, but he's got no allegiances to these current crop of players. Unlike Ljungberg, not to criticise Ljungberg, but he was involved in the process under Emery, so as much as I feel he's seen where Emery does wrong, on the flip side of that, when you're in that environment and we're still having the same results, are you really able to see something different? We're still going to go through poor form with Arteta, but someone different. Obviously, when you're not in the environment, you might have a different way of working, and I think the players need to hear something different. For Arteta, he's got the biggest carrot. He wants to be a manager. He's managing at a former club, at a top 6 club, with the carrot to obviously return to the top 4. There's obviously a lot of pressure, because with every defeat he'll be called overrated. With every victory, people will praise him like they're waiting for as the next Pep Guardiola. But realistically, similar to Emery in his first year, I don't think people will ask questions of Arteta immediately, even if he is a dud, because you'll look at the playing staff, you'll hear the same excuses that Emery got. He needs time, it's not his players, he needs to bring them in, he needs to get them out. I mean, what I'm hoping specifically is that Arteta can give confidence to these players. I'm hoping that we can see greater improvement defensively, as much as you can do with these players. Obviously, I want to see us pressing a bit more of a coordinated press, a bit more of all the Spanish influence you would assume Arteta has in his coaching arsenal in terms of his philosophy. I want to see these things. Again, I want to be wary because, again, I think the perception to which Arteta actually is as a manager, we don't know. We can't. For me, he probably will play attacking football in his, or look to install that. But I can't just assume that just because he's come from Barcelona's academy, played at Sociedad, obviously played for Arsenal, been with Pep. I can't assume that he could be a defensive coach for all I know. So I don't want to let the perception and the assumptions of the perceptions on how he'll coach dictate what I see. Obviously, it's not a move. It might not be the most inspiring of names, but I'm going to get behind Arteta like I'm going to do any other manager, because at least it's some clarity over the position. The season's a write-off. To have any chance of a good season, it's Europa League or bust. And I'm sure with that, it will allow the fans just to get behind Arteta, get behind these players and whatnot. We know some of these players just simply aren't good enough in terms of coaching people, so we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, the key thing for me is the backroom staff, because I do think we need to surround him with more experienced individuals than himself. Not necessarily ex-managers, but ex-coaches. Do you get what I'm saying? And I'm sure Arteta's got his own list. I don't want to speculate, but a former Spanish colleague and a fellow Spaniard in Xabi Alonso, didn't they play together for Sociedad? Isn't he in Real Madrid's youth academy? I'm sure he might relish the step up to, you know, it might not be a step up in terms of club, but in terms of position. Now, if I was Xabi Alonso, I'd stay at Real Madrid, because I believe that's where football is going. You look at Zidane, where was Zidane managing? Extreme example, but where was Zidane managing before that? Pep Guardiola the same. I do believe that's where management's going. I've told you lot before, I do think managers are going to be developed in-house, and we're moving away from the roles of managers. They might spend 10 years in League One, get teams promoted from League One, Championship, join a lesser top club, and then get the big move. We've gone away from that. So I'm prepared to give Arteta as much time as I can. And obviously, if he's not showing certain things, like with Emre, we'll get onto him. But I'm prepared to give him time, support him, because it's just nice to see, allegedly, there'll be some clarity over the position. Hopefully, he installs attacking football, tenacity, winning the ball back, a fraction of what you see with them City players, really and truly. Organises our defence and whatnot. I hope he can, but it's whether he gets it spot on from the start, it's gonna be trial and error, and I know fans don't want to hear that, but you have to look at the pros and cons. Arteta's a young coach. He is going to be naive at times. He is going to learn things. It's common sense. This is uncharted waters for him, and Arsenal fans might not feel any promise by that, because we probably do need an experienced head, someone who's a bit more of an authoritative figure. I don't believe football is run with an iron fist anymore, and I don't believe that can get you anywhere. But a part of me feels these players, there's only so much arms around players you can put. Sometimes they need to realise how tough football can be. Arteta might be that, to be honest. Like I said, I'm keen to see what Arteta's like, people. The most experienced manager, Ferguson in his prime would struggle at this club. For me, it's not even necessarily about the manager, because whether you got Emre or not, Lombard or not, or now, or if reports are to be believed, Arteta or not, they need to be supported. The board need to pull their finger out. If you look at it honestly to God, can you say the board are doing their job in terms of recruitment? Yes, Ceballos and Pepe looked great, and that's them two signings are particularly on the manager in me, because Emre failed to get the best out of them. He really failed to utilise any of his attacking players. But same way, look at the spine of this side. You're telling me he didn't need a central midfielder? Yeah, apparently Emre wanted that. He couldn't get that. Centre half, we spent 8 million on David Luiz. We spent 5 million on Denis Suarez last year. Do you get it? Right now, Ceballos' loan, I don't know how much that cost, but that looks expensive. Didn't we spend 70 million on Socrates, which he made me eat my words initially, because I was criticising that signing, but last season I think he did all right. Now I'm starting to think I should have backed myself. So what? That's 20 odd million on 2 centre halves. You get what you pay for. Again, if scouts do their job and you bring someone in for 20 million, then cool, but Socrates should have shown he's a dud from the jump. David Luiz, you knew what you was going to get. In terms of playing out from the back, yes, Luiz can do that, but he's the furthest thing from a competent defender. So why was he signed? Socrates, you know Emre wanted to play out from the back. Why was he identified? Obviously, the Dortmund roots and things like that. And at a point, it looked like a shrewd piece of business. But if we're honest, Socrates should have been a squad player at best. It doesn't matter who comes into this role. If they're not going to be backed, then it's all a myth. And Arteta surely has to have been given assurances, because in regards to being backed, being able to identify players, being able to have confidence in the board's ability to help him with his role, because he is a head coach. I don't know if Pep Guardiola will step down at City, but you hear that's a lot of talk at the end of this season, potentially. You'd think Arteta is earmarked for that position. Now, granted, you've heard Poch, you've heard Rodgers and Arteta for that. And he was somewhat you'd seen as being groomed. Now, it's going to be wait and see. I am seeing some fans already not supporting Arteta, and I'm not going to tell anybody what they can and can't do. If you wanted a more experienced manager, as we all did, I get that, but that's no fault of Arteta's. You can't begrudge him for turning up for the role and wanting the role. He deserves at least our chance to support him. Like I said, I advocate critiquing and praising smartly. I think a lot of Arsenal fans, they can't fall for the same trap they did last season, in that just obviously it's a new manager, so you give a blind, but many fans were just accepting a lot of what Emery was doing, and I hear that he needs time, he needs this and that, but call a spade, praise and ask question marks fairly, and hopefully fans won't be so quick to proclaim we've got our Arsenal back, the players are out of bad habits, be careful what you wish for, they said, and all of these things, because it's not a quick fix, and it's deeper than the manager. It's the culture at this club needs to change from top to bottom. If we want to be winners, then we can be winners. If the players want to be winners, eventually you'll hit a glass ceiling. If the managers want to win and the players don't, you'll hit a glass ceiling. The only way you can smash through that glass ceiling is if everybody's on the same page, and that's wait and see. And I think at least we should give Arteta that, support him and the lads. Listen, there's certain players I'm not going to forgive in this side, but the young players in particular, and the very few players, especially the attacking options that you can move forward with, together with Arteta, I'm not going to say I'm going to write a clean slate, but I'm prepared to say to a degree what's happened, and it's not going to change overnight. It's probably, like I said, it's going to be a sluggish season, and to call this season a write-off is a compliment, but I think Arteta at least deserves my support until he gives me something to lose confidence by. And again, this isn't confirmed and whatnot, but I'd like to see an end put to this managerial speculation so we can just get on with trying to improve as a team. On that note, I'm going to get out of here. People, Deluded, I'm out. Thank you for watching.